Hi, Mr. Secretary General. A question about Syria and Russia. Russia has begun to some strikes in Syria. It appeals for coordination with the US and the different partners on the ground and on the air. What is possible to do to avoid some misunderstandings there? And the second question, which is linked, is what is now the South flank strategy for NATO?
I'm concerned about the reports saying that the Russian airstrikes were not targeted against ISIL. And especially I'm concerned because there has been no real effort by the Russian side to deconflict the Russian airstrikes in Syria with the ongoing US-led coalition fighting ISIL. And I urge Russia to play a constructive and cooperative role in the fight against ISIL, and to strive for a negotiated political solution to the conflict. And to support Assad will not help, will not be a constructive contribution to a political solution. And I think the important thing now is that all efforts are focused on a political negotiated solution. When it comes to the strategy of NATO related to the challenges we see emanating from the south, this is one of the main challenges we face as an alliance: the increased turmoil, violence, failing states, terror, which we see in the Middle East, North Africa. And what NATO does is that we work with partner countries in the whole region, from Afghanistan, where we do training, advise and assist the Afghan National Forces. We will now start to do defense capacity building in Iraq, to work with the defense forces of Iraq to increase their capacity, their ability to defend and protect themselves. We work with Jordan, we work with Tunisia, and we work with other countries in the region. And the whole idea is that we will try to project stability without always deploying large number of combat forces, meaning that if we succeed in making them more stable, we are more secure. So our strategy is aiming at working with partner countries in the region, helping them to be more capable in creating stability, peace by themselves, supported by NATO. And I very much believe that the turmoil, the violence we see in Syria just underlines the importance of a comprehensive approach, and also NATO playing a role working with partner countries in the region to stabilize the region.
But given the migrant crisis is such a priority for Europe, and some European nations obviously are with the US-led anti-ISIS campaign, and Russia now being involved centrally in that campaign, whether anybody likes it or not, with its own agenda, at some point, and at what point, does NATO itself has to take this on as a mission to get involved both in Syria and in Iraq in a much more forceful and much more direct way, rather than just the training? And I do have a follow-up as well.
All NATO allies contribute to the coalition, the US-led coalition fighting ISIL. Some of them contribute to the airstrikes, others contribute with training of forces, Peshmerga, the Iraqi government forces. So all NATO allies participate in one way or another to the US-led coalition. And I think you also have to remember that it is a great advantage for this coalition that through NATO, the NATO allies, but also many of the partner countries which are also participating in the coalition, we have developed interoperability, we have developed skills, capabilities to work together, to conduct large military operations together. And we have developed this, for instance, through our joint efforts in Afghanistan. And now these skills are used in the US-led coalition fighting ISIL. So even if it's not a NATO-organized coalition fighting ISIL, NATO, all NATO allies are contributes to the efforts of the coalition. And in addition, we will then start to do what we call defense capacity building, train, help the Afghan army to modernize and to increase its capabilities of defending themselves, but also fighting ISIL.
There are some analysts who've said that Russia is going to use Syria as a bargaining chip to get off the sanctions hook in Ukraine. You've said that Russia must abide by all of its preceding agreements, even though Russia has not yet done that. What levers, given that now Russia is sort of the elephant in the Syria room, how does NATO keep pressure on Russia on Ukraine, or does Ukraine become a bargaining chip?
First of all, we will never accept that Ukraine becomes a bargaining chip, and especially not related to any of the events taking place in Syria or the Middle East. The important thing is that NATO's support for the territorial integrity, for the sovereignty of Ukraine is unwavering, and we will continue to support Ukraine. We support Ukraine politically, but also we provide practical support. I just visited Ukraine. I met with President Poroshenko, and we agreed to expand and to move forward on the cooperation between NATO and Ukraine, and we will continue to support them. I would like to add that it is encouraging that the ceasefire now is holding. And that is the first time since the ceasefire was agreed last fall. Since 1st of September, the ceasefire has mainly been respected. In addition, the parties agreed in the framework of the trilateral working group today to also remove all heavy weapons with less than 100 millimeters caliber. This is yet another step forward. So the situation is still fragile. There are still Russian forces in eastern Ukraine, but at least it is encouraging to see that there is an agreement on removing heavy weapons, and the ceasefire is respected, and this provides the ground, the basis for renewed efforts to find a political, peaceful, lasting solution to the crisis in Ukraine.
And that's
Next question on this side, please.
Mr. Secretary General, one question about Afghanistan. Are you upset about what's going on in Kunduz region, and what could be the implication for NATO? And, yeah.
What we see in Kunduz is that there is a very challenging and demanding security situation in Afghanistan. And we are very much aware of that, and that's also the reason why we will continue to support the Afghan national security and the national security forces. And we do so by our Resolute Support mission, which is a mission where we train, assist, and advise the Afghan national forces. We have ended our combat operation, but we will continue to support the Afghans to train and assist and advise them. We never thought that it would be easy, but the Afghan National Army is a capable army, and they have proven again and again that they're able to stand the ground, and they have shown great courage, bravery, and in the long term, it is better for Afghanistan that the Afghans are able to take care and responsibility for their own security without large NATO combat troops in a large number of NATO combat troops in Afghanistan. But as I said, we will continue to support them, and I think what we see in Kunduz just reminds us of that it is important that we continue to support Afghans.
If I may,
Yes, you can.
Sorry, about Turkey, which is whose position is not always very clear. What is your message and your assessment about?
Turkey is the NATO ally most affected by the crisis, the turmoil, the fighting taking place in Syria and Iraq, because Turkey is a border country. And Turkey has received hundreds of thousands, more than 1 million of refugees. And in addition, Turkey is now working closely with the US and the US-led coalition fighting ISIL. And Turkey is also has also agreed to make some of its air bases available for the efforts by the coalition fighting ISIL. And again, the important thing now is that Russia plays a constructive and cooperative role in the fight against ISIL. Any support for the Assad regime will not be constructive. Assad is part of the problem, and I'm concerned by the reports saying that the airstrikes by the Russian Air Force today has not been directed against ISIL.
Mr. Secretary, Jeff Mazie of Veer Magazine here in Norfolk. Part of the role of ACT here in Norfolk is to plan for and anticipate the future, and yet is somewhat surprised by Russia's recent actions, both in Ukraine and in Syria. Is your past experience in dealing with Russia as leader of Norway and dealing with these folks, are you able to help ACT here plan for anticipating the future perhaps better than in recent years?
The important thing is that we have to be prepared for the unexpected events. We have to be prepared for also handling a lot of uncertainty. We will never be able to predict exactly what will happen in the future, but we can be prepared to be able to react, to manage to deal with unexpected events. And that's exactly why adaptation, transformation is so important for the alliance. And now we see that the security environment surrounding NATO is really changing. We see a more assertive Russia to the east, being responsible for aggressive actions in Ukraine, annexing part of another sovereign country, annexing Crimea. And then we see all the turmoil, all the violence to the south, Iraq, Syria, Middle East. And that's the reason why NATO, very much based on advice, the work which is done here in Norfolk at ACT, is adapting, is transforming. And I'm very grateful for the work which is done here in Norfolk, because it's so crucial and it's so important, and really makes NATO into the agile, forward-leaning alliance we are. And it's only by constantly transforming the alliance that we can make sure that we also in the future is by far the strongest military alliance in the world, and also an alliance which is able to defend and protect all allies against any threat. And this is very much based on the excellent work which is done here in Norfolk by ACT.
Is counter-propaganda part of that as well in your program?
We will never counter propaganda with propaganda, but we will counter propaganda with the truth. Because in the long run, there is no doubt that the truth will prevail, and that propaganda will not be a useful tool to try to win the hearts and the minds of people. So NATO will continue to provide facts, to tell the truth, and I'm certain that in the long run, that's the only viable way to counter propaganda.
Another question on your right.
Mike Hixenbaugh from the Virginian Pilot here in Norfolk. How might the ongoing coalition air campaign in Syria be affected by the presence of Russian warplanes in the same airspace?
The important thing now is that, it's first of all that Russia plays, the important thing is that Russia has to play a constructive and cooperative role in the fight against ISIL. And a minimum requirement is that Russia is able to provide the necessary tools for deconflicting their air activity with the activities of the US-led coalition. And what concerns me with the airstrikes today is not least that there were no real effort from the Russian side to deconflict their airstrikes with the ongoing activities of the US-led coalition. And I have just spent some days in UN at the UN General Assembly, and it was a very clear understanding there that the Russians promised to make sure that they deconflicted their activities in Syria with the activities of the coalition, which has been fighting ISIL for a long time. And again, we urge Russia to play a constructive role, to be part of an effort to fight ISIL. but to support Assad will not be a constructive contribution to a peaceful and political solution to the situation in Syria.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. One on this side and one on the left.
There will be a NATO meeting with the Ministry of Defense next
Yeah.
week. You are going to implement a new NATO installation on the East members' territories, and you are going to hold a summit in Warsaw in 2016. What do you say when Russia says it's a provocative attitude from NATO?
What NATO does is a response to the assertive behavior of Russia, and also a response to the aggressive actions which Russia is responsible for in Ukraine. Illegally taking a part of another country, and that's the first time since the end of the Second World War that one country in Europe takes a part of another country by force. And also the fact that Russia continues to destabilize eastern Ukraine by continuing to support the separatists with weapons, training, and forces. And therefore NATO is responding. And we respond, our response is that we have increased our military presence in the eastern part of the alliance, very much by exercises which are planned here in Norfolk. So again, it's a very close link with, between what's going on in Norfolk and the NATO presence in the eastern part of the alliance in the Baltic countries and Poland, Romania, Bulgaria. We have increased the readiness of our forces. We have doubled the size of the NATO response force, and we have established a new, very high readiness joint task force, or spearhead force. And we have also, as you alluded to, decided to open small NATO headquarters in several of our eastern allied countries. This is defensive, this is proportionate, and this is completely in line with all our international commitments. So there is no reason to criticize what NATO does. NATO is very clear on that we will stay agile, we will be, we are rock fast when it comes to the steadfast when it comes to the message that we will defend and protect all allies against any threats.
Last question, Vago.
A resources question, sir. So after the Wales summit, there was an acknowledgement that everybody would have to increase defense spending in the alliance. Some of the alliance members are stepping up and are increasing spending. What's the alliance doing to help guide and shape that spending? And what are the metrics you're using to see whether or not any of this investment is actually succeeding in generating the extra capacity and capability the alliance is looking for?
So we decided to increase defense spending, as you stated, and we decided to do that in a way in 3 steps. First, to stop the cuts, then gradually increase defense spending as our economy grows, and then aim at 2% within a decade. We decided this last fall, so in a way, and then most budgets for 2015 or 2015 were already decided. So it's a bit too early to say so how far we have come in implementing the decisions we made in Wales related to budgets. But we will, and I will, and I have already made to one of my main priorities, make sure that we are delivering on the promise to increase defense spending. Partly because we need increased defense spending to respond to a more challenging security environment, but also because we need a more fair burden sharing between Europe and the United States. The United States pays around 70% of all the defense costs of NATO allied countries. So of course this is not a fair burden sharing, and therefore we are focused also on increased European contributions to the total defense spending of NATO. We will focus both on inputs, also the amount of money we spend, but also of course on outputs. And therefore we have developed different metrics, both measuring how much we spend, but also measuring actually what we get out of the investments we make in defense. So output is extremely important, and in the long run, the only reason for have input is to get some output.
Does the alliance have to spend more spend more time helping everybody better shape how they do the investment? So does NATO have to play a more central role in what each one of the countries is bringing to the party to make sure that you get rid of redundancy
We
and you
can
increase output?
always improve the way we work, and one of the very important tasks they are solving here here in Norfolk is defense planning, and defense planning is the key tool to make sure that we spend money, allocate money in an efficient way on the important shortfalls within the alliance, and that we coordinate between different nations. We will always focus on how can we do that even better, how can we improve. And this morning I met with a lot of the people at Norfolk, and we discussed exactly how we can develop that tool to be an even better tool in improving the way NATO works.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
This
you.
concludes today's media interaction with the NATO Secretary General. Thank you again, sir. Enjoy the ceremony.
Thank you.